What is everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. Let's do a therapy session today as I talk to you guys from obviously not my studio, but a hotel. But I think after last night's game, we're all kind of just going, what is the deal with this Cubs team? So I jumped on a little bit early because I got a little bit of a time crunch. And I know that sometimes when we start getting comments and in this conversation, it could be where I feel like I'm jumping off premature. So for those of you that are here, thanks for hanging out. Get your comments ready. Let's talk about this team. Is it going to be the bullpen that's going to turn around? Is it the bullpen that's going to ruin the season? They blew it again last night. I have no confidence in that bullpen right now. There's a lot of injuries that are involved in this. We're going to kind of get into that as well. Is it someone's fault? Some of you guys have gotten in the comment sections and said, hey, we need to fire Jed Hoyer. But if the Cubs had the regular bullpen, the guys weren't hurt, would it be a different season? The bullpen that David Ross had last year, all those guys on the IL right now. And some of those injuries really serious, and we probably won't see those guys back this year. So we're going to get into that. We'll look at the wild card standings, just a pop-up show right here on the Cubs Baseball Channel. If you're not part of the channel yet, please subscribe. Get in the comments section, share with your friends, like. It's a great way of saying go Cubs, and let's get this thing started. All right, what do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. Let's get into this thing. Another tough loss for the Cubs last night. The bullpen blew it again. I just don't understand how guys at that level can't throw strikes. So that's the thing that frustrates me the most. Colton Brewer got whipped around, and then Drew Smyly came in, and it was like you just could tell, hey, I'm going to walk this guy, I'm going to walk that guy. And a really bad Giants team beat the Cubs. And they beat them with a walk-off win. And the Cubs, it's the same formula the entire year. Cubs dominate with the starting pitching, get men on base, can't get the hit to drive the guys in. So they leave a lot of men on base. Score stays tight, bring in that crappy bullpen, and watch them blow it. And you can feel the pressure mounting on the bullpen every time they're in because they're just not any good. And it's almost like the game hits a standstill when you get bad pitching, in a Major League Baseball game, any baseball game. When your pitchers are in a good rhythm, which is most of the starters for the Cubs, to be honest with you. And with Kyle Hendricks, actually, if he can come back today and look like he's looked the last few times out, this rotation will have really not taken a bump at all, losing, obviously – Ben Brown, who's been great in the rotation, and and Jordan Wicks, who they're not going to have. But we're going to look at all the injuries that have mounted up on this team. I don't know why they're all there, but the bullpen blew another game. I think somebody was telling me it was like the 17th time that they've blown a game like this. And let me put the standings up, because if you win those games, you didn't have to even win. If you just win half of them, you're not in last place. But how about the Cubs in last place in a division full of small market teams? And that to me is like the part of this that drives you nuts, because you've got the resources that Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Milwaukee don't have when you're the Cubs. But how are you using those resources? Are you happy with some of the signings that they had, or would you have gone a different direction? Is Dansby Swanson for 7 years a good deal? It was the Ian Happ deal for 4 years and no trade clause. Was that a good deal? Are you happy with Seiya Suzuki? He looked like an MVP at the beginning of the season, and now he just looks uninspired. And that was what Ant said about it last night. I couldn't agree with him more. There's just no fire with this team. And they're only, I'd say only 9 games back of first. But when I put the wild card race up there in a second, you'll see they're still in the mix here. So they're still hanging in. But last place right now behind small market Milwaukee, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. And it's not like the Cubs are going out there and just getting beat down every night. it's the same formula every night. I mean, let's think about this. Be creative again. I mean, we talked about that on here, being creative with the offense. Look at you. Look at you bringing up the Rickwood outfit. I appreciate that, man. I loved it. Yuki, it was awesome. That was one of the highlights of my life. I saw the Giants there, and they stink. And I'll tell you what, like, I'm looking at that Giants-Cardinals game at the Rickwood game, and there's not many games I go to that aren't affiliated with the Cubs because, obviously you guys know why. Cubs fan, and I cover the Cubs. Look at the Giants are terrible. Their lineup is awful. You look down their lineup, and you're going, these guys – we have the same record as them now after last night. It was 3 games back in the wild card. Is that far back where you start looking instead of being a buyer, be a seller? Lewis says, I feel like fired Jed and all of them. I think Jed's on the hot seat. I really do. I just think in this business, if you don't make the playoffs and you're a big market team and you have the 8th highest payroll, isn't it the 8th highest payroll? There's a lot of money being spent, and it just feels like maybe the resources could have been used in a different way. But a lot of this too is bad luck. I mean, when you look at all of the injuries that they have, that's a part of it. But Christian says time is ticking. I mean, that's how it always is with the GM. And, Jed was the GM in San Diego. Things weren't going great there. Came with Theo to join the Cubs, got this opportunity. He really is a nice person. I like the deals, the contracts that he did make. I think that if they would have not signed Cody Bellinger, people would have been upset. I think now, looking at his production, maybe there wouldn't be the outcry that there has been. But James Rios says, but it's the bullpen and Jed Hoyer and the GM, which is Carter Hawkins. I'll put it up there for you. Thank you, Maynard. At the end of the day, the accountability is going to fall on ownership, like Tom and the Ricketts family. And then they got to decide what their next move is if the Cubs don't make the playoffs. But the other part of this, too, is that you got to decide what deals you're willing to make and what prospects you're willing to give up. I felt like the Jose Cuas deal was a bad deal. I felt like both trades at the deadline last year were bad trades. Maybe I'm wrong about the Cuas deal because Nelly just got designated for assignment by Kansas City. He's been in a slump this year. And obviously Jose Cuas just got claimed by Toronto. But when you look at these playoff standings, if you're the Cubs, I mean, what trade could you make that's going to make a difference? And that's what I want you guys to tell me. I mean, what are you going to go get a catcher? You're going to go get a DH? Then you got to get somebody in the bullpen. How many bullpen guys do you need? Or do you have options in the minor leagues? Are you willing to give some of these guys an opportunity in the minor leagues, which means you're going to have to move around the placement of the guys on your 40-man roster, which could also tell you what direction the Cubs could go. I mean, if they're going to make some trades, Brennan Davis, to me, I mean, seems like you're never going to bring him up. He's on the 40-man. Maybe somebody else would trade him, and he may be a good player. I don't know. Patrick, uninspired effort all year. We're 3 games out of the wild card, but this team has shown absolutely no signs that they're trending in the right direction. And, dude, you make the exact point that I'm kind of like getting to here. You make the exact point that I'm looking at myself, is that these standings, well, the Cubs are in there, right? I mean, the Cubs are only 3 games back. But the problem is what are we going to look to and say, hey, this team is ready to contend? The only time they played well was last year when it would have benefited the organization to trade off some guys and get some good pitching prospects back, some legitimate pitching back in return, maybe a catcher. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we don't want to get broken up. We're going to actually go out there and play. And they played great baseball. They proved me wrong because I didn't think they were that good last year, to be honest with you. I was shocked that they were able to win all of those games. What was it, 8 games in a row? And then they went like an entire month. They were winning about every game. I didn't think they had it in them. Now I know they have it in them because I've seen it. But I'm going, or do they? And what's the risk? You didn't make the playoffs last year. So how many of these guys that you have in your system, which, by the way, this system that the Cubs have, which is the second best according to the experts, and I agree with that, these guys have won championships every single level going up. And there's a logjam now in Double and Triple A. Guys that the Reds just promoted Levi Jordan to the big leagues. You guys are going, who's Levi Jordan? Levi Jordan is a guy that was in the system, was an afterthought, and it really was an afterthought because there's so much talent. And he just got promoted. He's playing on the Reds tonight. And he was Rule 5 picked up by Cincinnati because, they looked at him and said, hey, man, the guy went down to Double A last year. They were going to throw, I think a guy that's been released, Liam Spence, they were going to put him at shortstop. Then they threw him in there, Jordan, who couldn't find playing time in Iowa, and he was great. And he ends up getting he's in the big leagues now. Think about that. Like a guy that they didn't even have room for, didn't even really play, weren't really thinking of. Now he's in the big leagues with another team. My point is there's a lot of talent. And these guys have won championships at South Bend. I think they won at Myrtle Beach. They won at Tennessee. I don't know that they'll have the pitching to win at Iowa, but some of these guys have 3 championship rings. And I believe that matters. I think that when you go up as a group, look at the Yankees when they built their dynasty. They weren't trading Derek Jeter and Andy Pettitte and those guys away. They brought them up as a core, and then they got to the big leagues and they had a mentality to win. The problem with the Cubs right now in the big leagues is they have a mentality of millionaires. It feels like I'm watching millionaires, and millionaires are hard to motivate because they've got the money. I don't get that feeling when I see Pete Crow Armstrong or David Bodie, but those guys that got paid, they look like they got paid. They do. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just they do. They look like millionaires. I'm out there. I'm a multimillionaire. When I leave here, I'm going to get in my expensive Rolls Royce or some pimped out truck. I'm going to leave. And then I'm going to show up the next day and look like I'm going to be a millionaire again to play a kid's game. It's hard to get players that are paid to perform. That's why I'm against a lot of these contracts. And you guys know, I say it on Twitter. I say it on the shows. It's you look at around baseball, a lot of the teams that are good are a lot of the teams that have a very young team, and maybe they'll go out and they'll pay some guys. They'll pay the best players to come in like the Rangers did last year. And they've got some very high paid guys, but they also have a mix of young guys that are still hungry. They also have a great manager, but the Cubs have a great manager. I'm not throwing this on Craig Counsell. He's a victim of the players that are on the team. None of these guys he developed. He didn't have a role in any of it. He just showed up. Here's a roster. Let's see if we can win. And everybody gets hurt all the time. But uninspired, Patrick, great comment, man. Comment of the day. It is disappointing. Christian says we need a bullpen arm. We need like 4 bullpen arms. And you look at what they're doing, and I'm going to give them credit. I'm going to give the front office some credit. They went out and they've signed. They've basically looked at every single independent league and the Mexican league and anywhere that they could possibly find an arm, and they've signed him, except Trevor Bauer, who's now threatening to sue Major League Baseball for billions of dollars. I bet you he does, because I know a lot of you guys hate him. Do you hate him or do you hate losing more? Like I'm watching the guy, he's throwing 100 in the Mexican league, with, telling the other team what pitches are coming, and they still can't do anything about it. but he's not allowed in the league. So I know that's going to stoke up a conversation. I think the main man has said nope, and none of the teams are willing to test him on that. And that's a blackball situation, I think. Here's one right here. You and Coom Dog did an interview earlier this year and said after the final losses, he'd never seen Tommy Ricketts so mad. And honestly, this start to me would be a signal of changing of the guard. All right. I should probably put my glasses on. It's easier for me to read with my glasses. I know Tom Ricketts. Coom knows Tom Ricketts. He cares about the team. He wants to win. And I'm telling you, I know he gets villainized by the press, and I think that's kind of just like a baseball thing. I mean, every team, hates the owner, thinks they're cheap. I don't believe that. I like Tom. I think Tom has a leadership style that he hires people, lets them do the job. And if they don't do it, then, they have to face that accountability. That's what's going on right now. So when Theo left, Jed was next in line. He got this opportunity, but don't think for a second that Tom Ricketts doesn't care. Or, some of you guys will say, oh, he's just, he's all about the money. And, yeah, I mean, look, he's going to make money on the team, win or lose, but winning, you make more money. First off, if you think that's the motivation, and it is, you're going to sell more tickets, more people are going to watch your games. There's a lot more excitement, but he's a fan of the team, which when I talk to him, we talk about the team. Like he cares. It's not like he grew up a Rangers fan, or he didn't really like baseball. I mean, the guy loves baseball. I think that if he could, he'd probably go out there and join you guys for a cup snake, which I would do myself. But anyway, Matt says if the bullpen won half of the blown saves, we'd be in first. And that is my point, Matt. That's my point. But when you look at, and I guess this is a good time right now to kind of just talk about the injury situation with this team. The injuries are killing us. You're taught now you're missing your three best relievers from last year. Adbert Alzolay, Julian Merriweather, and now Mark Leiter Jr. on the IL. I mean, who's ever heard of a rib stress fracture? That's what Merriweather had. And then now this is a forearm tightness issue for Leiter. So who knows how long that's going to take. But you look at his ERA at 5.34 in 32 games. The guy's pitched 32 games this year. I mean, that's a lot of baseball. And I know why, because Craig Counsell's like, what other options do I have? He's been one of the only guys that I could count on. Leiter was talking about basically he was saying that pitching, when you pitch or you're sore a lot, you don't know when it's, basically when you're hurt or you're not hurt, when it's a bad situation or it's not, and all that stuff. He went out there and tried to pitch through pain, and it just didn't work. I feel for him. And I think that when you have a good team with other options, you can give guys rest. And I saw that interview that he did in the clubhouse, like right when he was going on. And I was like, man, I feel this guy's pain. Like he really cares. So Joan, good to see you, Joan. They are stuck with this team. They cannot trade the guys with the no trade clauses. And they don't have any trade chips on the MLB team. They cannot, and as she says in capital letters, trade the prospects. Joan, you are 100% where I am right now. 100%. I'm watching DJ Hurst pitch in the big leagues. I think that he has the potential to be a really good starter. I mean, I guess the fact that he was a record setter in his, one of his starts with all the strikeouts, but he's left-handed. He throws with I'll leave that up there. He throws with with that amazing changeup. He's a lot like Jordan Wicks. I mean, those guys kind of reminded me of each other. And I think they're both kind of set up with a formula where they could have success because of the pitch repertoire, because they're left-handed, they're winners. And we got back Jamer, and Jamer, like, he was okay. And then he signed with the Reds. You know, that's the risk that you take if you make these deals. And who are you going to trade? I mean, are you really going to trade? Are you going to trade Matt Shaw? Are you going to trade Owen Casey? Are you going to trade Alexander Canario? I know Canario swings and misses a lot, but I had a scout tell me the other day, yeah, he might swing and miss a lot, but when he hits, it's loud. It's loud. Give me some swings and misses if he's going to make that kind of contact. These are all the guys, too, that you traded away that team that won the World Series and pieces that came after when you were trying to win to get back. You know, Owen Casey came for Yu Darvish, and Alexander Canario was for Chris Bryant. You know, Pete Crow Armstrong's in the big leagues. He was for Javi Baez. I mean, you made all these deals to build this team to get to that point where you could contend. And now it's time to figure out whether you're going to play these guys or you're going to trade them. But are you going to trade James Triantos? You're going to trade Matt Shaw? And because I don't know that there's one or two moves that you can make that are going to make a difference, because we'll go back to the conversation that started this is that what are you going to rely on to go back and say these guys can do anything with it? And I'm less inclined to hammer the front office, because last year they did make a run. They didn't make it, and David Ross paid the price for that. He was the sacrificial lamb because they didn't make the playoffs. But that's what happens in this game. If you don't make the playoffs and you make trades and you don't win, somebody's held accountable. And if they don't start hitting, somebody's going to be held accountable. If they don't start driving in runs, somebody's going to. If you scored more runs, the bullpen wouldn't matter as much. Robin of Loxley. Why don't we take a flyer on Bauer? Not the start, use his energy and try him as a two-inning closer? Because I'm telling you, there is a blacklist for this guy. And I'm not going to defend his character at all. I'm not. A lot of this he did to himself. And you guys have said that in the comments section. It's always a big debate about Trevor Bauer. I'm not defending his character. I think he got framed. I mean, he's proven that. And somebody's getting sued right now over making false accusations and then trying to sue him for $50 million. But, some of that stuff comes with the company you keep. With that said, should he be banned from baseball? A soft ban? A blackball? No. And I would take him too. And put him on a league minimum. And then if he acts like a fool, get rid of him. I think he'll be a model citizen. And I think that what happens when in life you fall down and you get humbled, you appreciate the people around you a little bit more in the situation that you're in some more. But I could be wrong. But he's not that. No one's signing him. But I'll tell you what, if I was the Cubs and it's like, okay, well, I'm either going to go against the team, the league that's blackballing this guy, or I'm going to sign him. They're going to be mad, but I'm going to maybe try to save my job. I think that it's starting to get to the point with this Cubs team where they need a Hail Mary. And that Hail Mary to me isn't trading away the prospects that make up the number 2 organization in baseball as far as minor leaguers go. Maynard, Hendo is the worst. Millionaire, 6 home runs, 1 messed up 1 pitch. I'd say this, man. I've actually liked Kyle Hendricks and how hard he's fought through his failures. If it was me, I would have had a tough time keeping him on the roster because he was so bad. But we'll see if he's got it turned around. It looks like he has. He's throwing that curveball a lot more. He just doesn't have the stuff to make a lot of mistakes. But every time that he came out of those bad outings, his positivity was like, man, this guy, did he just not watch what I just watched? And I love him as a person. And I hope, man, that what we've seen over the last 15 plus innings is the real deal with him. I really, really do. Omar wants to know, how come the Phillies and the Padres can spend money well? I wouldn't put the Padres in that mix, but I will put the Phillies in that mix. I think about this, man. Like when you buy clothes, like, when I go out and buy something, I try to buy like something that I really, really, really like. And instead of buying like 5 things I don't like that much, I'll buy one thing that I do like a lot. Just it's just my philosophy. So I might not have as many things, but the things I have, I really like. And I feel like baseball GMs is kind of the same role, right? Like the Phillies went out and got Bryce Harper. Now he's expensive, but he's lived up to that. He's been amazing. He's been hurt some, but he comes back. He's fiery. He's been worth the money. He sells tickets. And a lot of times you'll sign 5 guys for the price of him, and you get nothing back in return, or you get very little back. And I feel like the Cubs are kind of like, I think they overpaid for some of those guys, or they could have done the same thing with what they had in the organization and not really lost a lot. Like I look at Dansby Swanson and I'm like, you paid this guy 7 years. And I don't know that Luis Vazquez couldn't come in and be very similar. I think he could play Gold Glove defense. I do. And I think you guys will see that eventually. I don't know that I think Dansby's a better hitter, but right now Dansby's hitting like 210 or something. I think that Vazquez could hit 210. And then it's like, well, the other stuff, running the bases and all that. Look, I think Dansby's better, but I don't think he's that much better. Not 7 years and all that money better. If you go out there and you're going to spend that kind of money, why not ramp it up and just get the best of the best? The Juan Soto, the Bryce Harper, the Mookie Betts. You know what I'm saying? Where you're going to be stuck for a while because it's a lot of money, but you feel like their production and their track record tells you that they're a player that doesn't care about the money. They're hungry to win. Christian says that this is the worst bullpen he's ever seen. I looked at the stats on the bullpen, guys, and the Cubs bullpen, as bad as it's been, is still like they're like 13th right now, according to some of the metrics, which is amazing to me. So it must just be like the high leverage stuff, like last night's game. Got a lead, need 5 outs, everything's rolling along, and then all of a sudden everybody just stinks. So maybe your bullpen ERA isn't that bad, but the 3 runs that you gave up were all in clutch time. Yeah, Everett says it was terrible last night. How about staying up for that crap? like the headline was going to be, Cubs ruined Willie Mays night. They're all the Giants are wearing the Willie Mays jerseys. Where they couldn't. The Giants couldn't touch Justin Steele. I mean, they got the home run, but they just couldn't touch him. Like he was just, maybe leave him in longer. Maybe leave him in for another inning. And then that way you can shorten up how long your bullpen's in. But then maybe you hurt your starters instead of relievers. But baseball used to be a game where the starters tried to go complete games and save the bullpen. Maybe the Cubs need to start thinking about that too, instead of pulling everybody out around that imaginary number of 100 pitches. But I don't think it's going to matter when this team is out of it. I love the bandana, John. Bad contracts: Hendricks, Smiley, Mancini, Hosmer, Neris, Happ, maybe Swanson. We have all these prospects, but they're blocked by expensive, mediocre players. Dude, I felt the same way. I'm looking at the Happ contract and I'm going, okay, why would you sign him to a long-term deal when you got like 5 outfielders in your system that are top-notch outfielders? And I'm not talking about like would Hap outperform them or would they outperform Hap? It's the financial aspect of it. You know, like you haven't developed any pitching in this organization until last year. And then go look at the track record. And then all of a sudden now we got guys that are coming up there in the bullpen and they're not ready yet. Luke Little's got to throw strikes. You know, he could be a very effective guy, but he's got to throw strikes. But so my point is, why not spend that money on, back end bullpen guys? Why not spend that money on, pitching, which is something that you guys constantly talked about in the comment section. Hendricks got that $16.5 million option. That has turned out to be a bad option. Drew Smiley, not good. Mancini, is he still getting paid? Hosmer. There were two deals last year where you're like, what are we doing? And those guys got released. Neris, I'm not going to put Neris on that list. I know Neris he's heart attack waiting to happen, but he's actually been, compared to some of the other guys, worth the risk. The Hap, though, not having a no trade clause, he's blocking Canario, he's blocking Owen Casey. He's blocking the guys that are in the minor leagues that could come up there, Pete Crow Armstrong, that could come up there and play outfield for you, not cost you anything, and you gave him a no trade clause. I think a lot of us are really just puzzled by that. Now, even if you paid him, there's teams that I think would trade for Hap because there's certain teams that he just kicks their butts. I mean, you listen to the Cardinals broadcast, and they're like, "Oh, Hap." They hate Hap. Pirates hate Hap. Reds hate. Like he does beat up on the teams in the division. So I'm sure that there's somebody that would take him just for that. Aaron says Bauer could not save the ship from sinking. I'm not saying he could. What we're talking about here is that there's not one move you can make right now that saves this team. There's just too many problems. Cubs fan says Bauer did nothing wrong, and he's proven it. I'm not arguing with that. I'm telling you right now, though, he is blackballed. He's blackballed. There's no way that they would go and sign these guys off of independent league teams, and you look at what he's able to do. He's a former Cy Young Award winner. It's called being blackballed, and they do that in this world. They're like, hey, you know what? I don't like Mick. I'm not giving him a job. I don't care that he's a better broadcaster than 15 other people. He's not getting up here. I don't like who he voted for last election. I don't like that he said this. I don't like that he did that. It happens in this world. Chuck says Ricketts has been on board with this crap season. Otherwise, Jed would have been gone. You can't look, man. You can't, if you don't fire your executives during the season, like they still have a chance. I mean, look, man, Chuck, and I do love I love the space shuttle in there. Here's what I'm going to throw this up again. As bad as it is, they're still not far under 500, and they're still 3 games out of the final wild card spot. How about baseball has made it to where, you're 1 game over 500 and you're in the playoffs? You remember like it used to be you had to have a killer season to get in the playoffs. And now it's like, as long as you hover around 500, there's a spot for you. I mean, the funny thing is like, even if the Cubs were willing to wheel and deal, there's only 2 teams out of it. Colorado and Miami. And there's a reason why they're 27-51. It's not like you're going to go pick their roster clean and get a bunch of good players. And then in the American League, the White Sox, like I hear the names that people tell me are out there, as far as options to trade. And I'm going, it feels like Jose Cuas again. Donnie says, time to clean house, including Ricketts. Hard to do when he owns the team. 17 blown saves is unacceptable. So I agree with that. I don't know what you're going to do to fix it, though. I'm just scrolling through and look at your guys' comment. Jim says I'm a little late to the dance. Hey, I just wanted to do this show because I felt like we needed to get together. By the way, guys, programming note too. I'm going to have Al Yeldon on from Bullpen Blew tomorrow. Probably another live show. He's got a book that he's put out, a Cubs book, and then we're going to try to solve the issues. I want his opinion on this. Does he think that Jed Hoyer is in big trouble? Donnie, you put this. I saw this, man. You said that Justin Steele is the next Greg Maddux. Man, I talked to Greg Maddux about leaving the Cubs. That was a heartbreaker, man. Larry Himes was the GM, and Larry Himes didn't believe in Greg. I think Greg told me that he said, well, you never won 20 games. So then he went out and won 20 games the next year. They didn't want to pay him. Can you imagine that? They just pay the guy. We were talking about the next statue. Man, I loved Greg Maddux. I wish he had played there long enough to get a statue. Dustin, long time no talk, Mick. Thank you for jumping on, brother. Question for you. At what point does this organization start holding the players accountable as opposed to firing coaches, and why not? Well, that's always the $1 million question, Dustin. That's always the $1 million question, because at the end of the day, it's up to the players. It's up to the players. They've got to decide whether they want to win or not. Last year, the Cubs the players decided that they cared because their team was about to get traded away. And then they went out and started a run. I think if the Cubs fall 5 games back, then it's time to sell. And there's a few reasons why. The first reason is that this team isn't winning a World Series. They're just not. And if you're not going to win a World Series, then what are you doing? Are you building to a World Series? Do you see a World Series with these guys winning? Like, do you envision this group winning a World Series? We saw what it looked like when Chris Bryant came through the minors. They're like, okay, that's what it looks like. Dominated everybody. When Javi Baez came through, he was so electric. He played on another level. Kyle Schwarber came through. It was like watching Babe Ruth. They had to put him in the big leagues because he was one of the best left-handed hitters in baseball, and he was in Double-A. He couldn't catch. He couldn't run, but he could hit. You started to see these guys come together, and then you got John Lester, and you just had you could feel the magic. Do you guys feel the magic with this group? And if you don't, then it's time to start looking at building with the guys that are in the minor leagues. Owen Casey and Pete Crow Armstrong and Alexander Canario and James Triantos and Matt Shaw. Figure out what you got with Brennan Davis. Is he there, or get rid of him? Use that if you think he can play, let's get him in the big leagues and play him. If not, let's get him out of there and use that spot on somebody else. The expanded playoff and the Diamondbacks making it to the World Series made all these GMs too cute in the offseason. Yeah, man. I mean, this is what saves their jobs. I mean, you really can go into the boss's office and be like, man, we're only 3 games out. We're 37-42. I mean, we're right there. Forget about the fact that there's, let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the wild card picture. You're tied for the 3rd worst team in the National League. But you know what? We're in the playoff race. Every time they expand these playoffs, I look at it and I go, they expand these playoffs because it saves jobs. And it's in every league. And I guess the TV part of it is that, look, we're building some drama, well, like it's going to come down to the end. Man, our team's so hard to watch. I mean, just once get a damn hit when you got men on base. Like I feel bad for the third base coach. It's like you you try to roll the dice because you know that the next guy's going to strike out or hit a weak ground ball and you're not going to score. And then the guy gets thrown out at home and everybody wants to hang you. Everybody wants to chase you down. It's like, man, you're just trying to. I think he's one of the best. It's like, what do you do? It's just crazy. I don't know. All right, let's do one more, guys. I'm going to bounce off here at 11, and it's 11 now, so we'll do one more. But love talking to all you guys. And again, we're going to do a live show tomorrow, and that show tomorrow is going to be with our man Al Yeldon. Here's one. Mick, funny thing you said something about superstars because even Boog on the broadcast said this team needs a guy like Aaron Judge. Why does he even understand that? What in the world is Jed thinking? I mean, everybody could use Aaron Judge this year. Last year, he was hurt. The year before that, it was like so much fun. Watching Judge hit all those home runs, but they've got to have like a star. It was supposed to be Bellinger. I mean, he's the guy paid to do that. And he's kind of like he's hitting this year instead of being like a number 3 guy in the lineup. He's like a number 2 guy. Like he's not driving in the runs. He's not hitting the home runs. $230 million buys a last place team. Yeah, they do. All right, guys. Well, look, all of you, thank you so much for being on. We'll do it again soon. All of you, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being part of our channel, talking baseball with us every day. Craig Counsell was given, and he's trying to make chicken salad out of it. Cubs fan, I think that's the perfect ending to this show. But guys, totally love you guys. Thank you for being part of the channel. Means more than you know that we can get 130 people on here talking Cubs baseball with an hour's notice. But give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the show. Make sure you subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And we'll see what happens today. And we'll jump back on tomorrow with a live show. And don't forget, Ann will be on after the game. Go Cubs.